You know that moment when someone asks for your Instagram and instead of immediately giving them your username, you say, "I actually don't use Instagram." And then there's that little pause, that slightly confused expression, almost like you've admitted that you're missing out on something everyone else enjoys. For a long time, I assumed people who avoided Instagram were simply uninterested in staying connected. But what I eventually discovered is that psychologists have been quietly observing something fascinating about people who don't feel naturally drawn to platforms like Instagram. And honestly, the explanation has surprisingly little to do with social media itself. Here's what makes this interesting. Most people assume that avoiding Instagram means avoiding people. But according to psychology, those are two completely different things. You can have thousands of followers and still feel disconnected, and you can have no Instagram account at all while maintaining meaningful relationships. The difference isn't really about visibility. It's about connection, because being visible and feeling connected are not the same thing, even though modern culture often treats them as if they are. Think about what happens every time you open the app. Within seconds, you're seeing someone's vacation, someone else's promotion, another person's engagement, and countless moments from lives that appear perfectly put together. None of those things are necessarily bad, but your brain still has to process all of them. And here's where things become psychologically interesting. Your mind doesn't always distinguish between experiences you're living and experiences you're constantly consuming. Emotionally, both take up space. And honestly, I think this is something many people feel without fully understanding it. They don't wake up one day and decide they're finished with Instagram. It usually happens gradually. They stop opening the app as often. Scrolling starts feeling less exciting. Sometimes they even feel strangely exhausted afterward. Nothing terrible happened. Nobody offended them. They simply begin noticing that something feels heavier than it used to. Psychologists often talk about something called cognitive load. That's just a complicated way of describing how much information your mind is carrying. Imagine trying to work with 30 tabs open on your computer. Eventually, everything slows down, not because the computer is broken, but because too much is happening at once. Human beings aren't very different. Every post, every story, every notification becomes another tiny demand on your attention. None of them seem overwhelming individually, but together they create a kind of mental clutter that many people don't even realize they're carrying. And here's the part most people overlook. Some personalities are naturally more sensitive to that kind of stimulation. Just like some people love crowded concerts while others find them exhausting, some people simply function better with a little more quiet. Research on personality consistently shows that human beings vary tremendously in how much external stimulation they enjoy. Some people thrive on constant interaction. Others feel their best when life contains more space. Neither approach is wrong, they're simply different. Unfortunately, our culture doesn't always make room for those differences. We're constantly surrounded by the idea that more followers are better, more engagement is better, and more visibility is better. And after hearing those messages long enough, many people begin questioning themselves. They wonder whether they're missing out. They wonder why everyone else seems so excited about something that leaves them feeling strangely drained. But psychology reveals that not everyone needs the same amount of stimulation to feel fulfilled. Something else happens when people stop using Instagram, and honestly, I find this part fascinating. They begin experiencing moments without immediately wondering how those moments will appear to other people. Dinner becomes just dinner. A walk becomes just a walk. A beautiful sunset becomes something to appreciate instead of something to post. And while that sounds simple, it's actually surprisingly profound. Because somewhere along the way, many of us started turning experiences into content before fully experiencing them ourselves. And here's where things become even more interesting. Psychologists talk about something called intrinsic motivation. The idea is actually very simple. It means doing things because they matter to you rather than because they'll impress other people. Reading because you enjoy reading. traveling because you love discovering new places, pursuing hobbies because they make you happy, not because they'll receive likes or attention. And interestingly, many people who aren't attracted to Instagram often derive more satisfaction from the experience itself rather than the reaction it receives. Now, don't misunderstand this. Avoiding Instagram doesn't automatically make someone wiser or more enlightened. Social media itself isn't the problem. Millions of people use Instagram in healthy ways. The issue isn't the platform, it's alignment. Does the way you're living actually match what you genuinely need emotionally? Or are you forcing yourself into habits simply because everyone around you expects them? And honestly, I think people who don't use Instagram are often misunderstood. They're sometimes labeled private, antisocial, or disconnected. But privacy isn't necessarily secrecy. Sometimes privacy is peace. Sometimes it means keeping certain experiences sacred, not because you're hiding them, but because not everything meaningful needs an audience. In a world that encourages constant sharing, choosing not to share everything can seem unusual, yet for many people it simply feels natural. Here's something psychologists have been studying for decades that deserves more attention. Solitude and loneliness are not the same thing. We often use those words interchangeably, but they're completely different experiences. Loneliness is painful. It's the feeling that your need for connection isn't being met. Solitude, on the other hand, can be deeply restorative. It's where thoughts become clearer. It's where emotions get processed. And many people who don't use Instagram aren't escaping the world. They're simply protecting space for their inner world. And this is where things become fascinating. Modern neuroscience suggests that creativity and reflection require periods of reduced stimulation. When your brain isn't constantly processing updates, comparisons, and endless streams of information, it finally has room to wander. That's often where ideas emerge. That's where clarity appears. Some of our best thoughts arrive not while consuming more, but while sitting quietly with ourselves. Before anyone misunderstands this, choosing not to use Instagram doesn't automatically make someone happier, and having Instagram certainly doesn't mean someone is unhappy. The real question isn't whether social media is good or bad. The question is much simpler. Does your lifestyle align with what genuinely gives you peace? Because psychology repeatedly shows that authenticity matters more than conformity. And this brings us to something many people need to hear. If you've never felt particularly interested in Instagram, if you've sometimes wondered why social media seems far more exciting to everyone else, or if you've worried that something was wrong with you because you preferred a quieter way of living, psychology actually offers some reassuring news. You may not be broken. You may not be antisocial. And you may not be missing out. It may simply be that your mind is asking for a different balance. Because at the end of the day, the psychology of people who don't use Instagram isn't really about social media at all. It's about attention. It's about boundaries. It's about understanding how much stimulation your mind naturally enjoys. And perhaps most importantly, it's about realizing that not everybody is searching for the same kind of life. Some people seek excitement. Some people seek connection. Some people seek adventure. And some people quietly seek peace. And if these conversations resonate with you, consider subscribing to the channel. And if you'd like to support these deeper explorations into human psychology, becoming a channel member is always appreciated. It genuinely helps, and I'm grateful for everyone who chooses to support this community. Because maybe understanding yourself isn't about becoming someone different. Maybe it's about realizing that you've spent years comparing yourself to standards that were never designed for you. And once you see that, something interesting happens. You stop asking why you're different, and you start asking what kind of life actually feels right for you. Because not everyone is searching for more attention, not everyone wants to turn every moment into content, and not everyone needs to be seen all the time. Some people are simply searching for peace. And sometimes peace looks much quieter than the world expects.